We
Great.
are recording. Good afternoon.
Yeah, yeah,
We're
I
on the
guess so.
Daze Professional Development Group. It's me, Danette Edwards. I'm here today with Joe Tower. I'm excited to host him this afternoon or this morning if you're logging in from another coast. I'm on East Coast time. And today, Joe is going to talk to us about journey to success without a relevant degree or experience. And this is Joe's his career journey. I'm excited to have that. You know, I love the journeys. So Joe's journey to become a senior producer and writer. He's going to discuss that. He's going to talk about how doing good work and providing quality service, no matter the position, leads to success. How using digital and virtual platform opportunities for content creation and distribution. So he's going to talk about that. And a little about Joe. Joe Tower is a content creator from the Midwest who works in literary publishing, entertainment marketing, and extended reality technology. Currently, he is the executive editor for the Lit Consultancy, Right Way, and senior producer at Indie, a world leader in AR solutions. I'm not even sure. You have to tell us a little bit about AR solutions.
Oh, yeah, sure, we'll do.
Okay. He's an award winning screenwriter and a published essayist, interviewer, and cultural critic. So, Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you immediately. And first, oh, guys, we're going to have a dedicated Q&A. So, drop your questions for Joe in the chat and I'll get them to him at that time. I'm going to turn it over to you, Joe. And if I left anything out of your bio, if there's anything else you'd like to say to us, please do. I'm going to mute myself and close my camera. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Danette. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody. I want to thank you again for being here today and for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. Um, I do want to get to questions real quick. So I'll talk a little bit, but I know I always feel like if I'm talking too much, I'm not listening. So we're going to get to that as quick as possible. Yeah, as Dinesh said, I'm a content producer. I'm a writer and content producer, and also an executive editor. I grew up from the outside Chicago, rural area outside Chicago, and went to. I did get a college degree. I did get a go to college for radio and creative writing. A couple of dark horse majors that didn't ever net anything directly, but gave me some good tools, I think, for what I'm doing right now. And then actually, I was a full time bartender. Worked in food service and hospitality for 10 years, and by the end of the decade, didn't foresee a way of getting out, and uh, and um, and then in the last few years, kind of finally broke in. I worked primarily in entertainment marketing, writing commercials, and now uh, work in um, creative production and content creation for AR in particular, primarily. AR is an extended reality technology. It's called stands for augmented reality. Basically, everything from Snapchat to TikTok filters. Those are all some version of augmented reality or extended reality. So my job as a producer is to produce the live content that is used in those technological applications. So that's what I'm doing now. And also, I just launched a business that I founded with a close friend and colleague called Right Way. It's a literary resource, and we offer full service, trying to make aspiring writers published authors. So we offer services in the development of nonfiction book proposals, fiction manuscripts. We do design, we do website design, we do branding, um, and try to preserve writers' integrity and intention while also trying to make them some money. Um, so my sort of journey to where I'm at right now, because I don't I don't really I don't have a degree in film production. I don't have a degree in marketing. I don't have a ton of experience in marketing or production, and yet here I am, and I certainly have always enjoyed uh, or had a um, proclivity to writing. So that's always something that I've loved and always something I've been good at, and then kind of spread that out into a lot of different positions and work opportunities, professional opportunities that I may not have been able to use otherwise. So I did leverage something I enjoyed, something that I was good at. Um, and I also I'm not a published author. I have experience editing, and I do think I'm a good editor. But um, I uh, I partnered up with a very trusted friend and colleague, who she herself is a successful best-selling author, and we work together to utilize both our strengths, um, and focus it on developing a business model that we feel is truly geared towards helping people achieve their dreams, which is is huge, and it's one of the reasons that I'm here today. So, like I said, I was born in a really rural area outside of Chicago, but obviously I'm white and male, and so that gave me that's a couple of advantages right there. I understand that. Um, but I do think I found my way into, just everyday job, working class jobs pretty quickly. Um, and even though I did get my undergrad degree at a city college in Chicago, um, I also didn't ever use them directly. And as I said, I ended up working behind the bar pretty quickly, working for minimum wage, working for tips, grinding it out full time, long hours. And um, Looking back on it, I think when I was in college, um, I didn't really have a good sense. I had a sense of the kind of work that I would like to do, but I didn't. And I knew or felt that I wanted a career path, a distinct career path, so that you can, check the boxes or set up the dominoes and knock them down. But I didn't know what exactly I wanted that to be, and I certainly didn't know um, necessarily what my way in was. And um, I knew what I didn't want, which I think is equally as important as knowing what you want. You should know what you don't want. I knew I never wanted to be a suit and tie guy. I knew I never wanted to be, in a cubicle doing data entry. It's just personal for me. Some people are really into the office culture. It's not really my thing. Um, let me just open the chat here so I can see it. Um, so, yeah, I knew what I didn't want, and those were the things I didn't want. And in the immediate, working in bars, working in food service, working in hospitality, sort of checked some of the boxes of what I didn't want, but I certainly wasn't feeling fully rewarded for my work. I didn't feel like I was getting paid for my value. And hang on, let me tell you, my mouth is dry because I'm nervous. Instantly. Um, so check some boxes. I wasn't in 9 to 5. I wasn't wearing a suit and tie. Wear what I want, work, weird hours, have days off, cash in the pocket. And that was all great. But I didn't feel like I was valued. I didn't feel like I was moving up anywhere. I didn't feel like I was doing work that I really cared about. Obviously, there's a certain amount of I still took great care in the work that I was doing. I still took great care of my job, which I think is like the most important thing, for you to care what you're doing. If you don't, it's going to show. It's going to be in the quality of your work. But it still wasn't, cumulatively, it wasn't where I wanted to be. And after year of kind of like continuing to excuse it and continuing to wonder how long I was going to be in that particular like minimum wage grind, I sort of felt like I was going to give up. and just relegate myself. Like I'm like, this is where I am. This is what I do. This is fine. Um, and I think in the pursuit of getting out of it, the pursuit in finding a career path, the pursuit of doing work and earning money that I felt was worth it and was worth my time. I encountered a kind of persistent issue, and it's an issue that I'm very concerned that I try to advocate for now. I am a member of the International Workers of the World Union. I am an advocate for food service and hospitality workers, minimum wage workers, low wage workers. And I think one of the problems is um, you end up in a job that's not satisfying monetarily, it's not satisfying professionally, it's not satisfying personally. And you do it for so long that becomes your job experience. And I think in our work culture in this country, job experience tends to trump applicable skill. And what I'm here to tell you today is the effort in focusing on your applicable skill is the selling point, can be the selling point, not just your job experience. Who we are and what we want to do and what we're capable of is distilled down to a one-page resume. And, numbers like that of applicants and open jobs and, what qualifications a lot of employers are looking for, which are, I think, absurd. The numbers are stacked against us, and it gets really, really hard to see any sun on the horizon. And I totally get that. So I was running up against that, and the things that I kept doing outside of my day-to-day job, the things that I kept doing were things that I keep doing today. I still like hustling for side gigs, still trying to make contact with people, still trying to reach out to people online via email, still trying to network with friends, and trying to network with friends. Oh, that's a great question. I will talk about that in a second. Thank you, Danette. I was trying to network with friends, network with people I knew, get in touch with people, keep conversations going with people, and focusing on any outside work that I did get. I always tried to focus on doing the best job I possibly could. If I didn't necessarily know something or specialize in something, I was really open to learning, really open to not knowing. I think it's definitely a bigger offense for a prospective employer or a freelance contract employer. If you lie about not knowing how to do something, is way worse. Or if you lie about knowing how to do something, it's way worse than just admitting you don't, and opening yourself up to learning. Which is another thing that I realize is difficult to overcome. But I was always very open to not knowing and willing to learn. And I just tried to focus on making sure that any work that I did do, I was doing the best possible work. And I always tried to make sure, even when networking with prospective employers, with people that I worked for, that I always try to make it somehow personal. And I think, and trying not to look at my association with them as a strategy, and trying not to look at it as a contact, and trying to look at it as person to person. And in the work that I do now, I do all those same things. And obviously, it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of hustle, and it took a lot of cobbling together a lot of jobs and a lot of work. But I still do all those things today. I still just sit down and I focus on making sure that I can do the best possible job that I'm capable of. I'm not a yes man, but I definitely, in any kind of service, I think if it's within your capacity, it never hurts you to agree to do it. I'm very opportunistic. So I even in specifically with work opportunities, I can get very nervous about saying no. I get a little FOMO, um, and also I try to make things personal. I try to make things, you know, and the pandemic has sort of produced an interesting demand for this. And I think even in the pursuit of employment, even in the pursuit of like changing career trajectories, and this is why what Danette is doing here, I think is so fantastic and indicative of that, is that we're addressing person to person. We're making it personal. We're not looking at everything like it's transactional. And I really think that strips the potential out of it. So, um, as I said, I spent a lot of years behind the bar and a lot of years trying to cobble together um, this life that I have right now. This sort of weird collection of work that I have right now that I really love. Um, the company that I work for in AR as a producer is actually a work contact. I've started doing really like menial odd job tasks for this company like 5 or 6 years ago. And but was very enthusiastic and was very willing to learn, was very curious. And luckily it's run by a CEO who very much shares this philosophy that we should be focusing not on related job experience, but applicable skill, which we can talk about more in the Q&A. Danette says there's some hospitality students in the group, and I'd love to talk to you guys, obviously, or address any questions that you have. But he saw applicable skill, and so I was very lucky in that regard. Marketing, my work in entertainment marketing really comes down to one or two third degree associations with friends, with creative directors that work for marketing agency. And then it was just a matter of cold call, cold email, querying. And for that aspect of the hunt, I will say, because I wrote down a bunch of stuff, but I don't want to focus on the notes. I sort of want to stay in the moment and not worry about what I intended to say as much as what you guys want to hear. For that in particular, consistency is key, and consistency is not. I think consistency is different than a grind, and different than a hustle, and it's different than work. Consistency is just being regular and not not constant. You don't want to like dog people, but I think consistency also requires a sort of lack of pretense and a lack of fear about how potential employers might respond to a cold email or respond to a cold call. I just think in a lot of ways you need to keep at it. And for me, keeping at it paid off. And eventually, and you got to take the numbers too. So if, you send out cold calls to 5 employers, be reasonable, be realistic. If you hear back from 1, that's a win. So that's a win. And then my company that I share with 2 other people, one being our CEO, who's best-selling author, Ria Fry. She and I are longtime friends, longtime colleagues, and that was, we both saw an opportunity, and I think we leveraged our friendship, we leveraged our professional associations to sort of put our best foot forward in starting a business. So we launched in January, and that's become a big focus in the pandemic, because that work is primarily remote. So and that's where I'm at now. Just quickly, I want to look at some of the texts Annette and I have been sharing.
Okay, I can read them to you, Joe.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right, so let's start with the first one. I have great content for a book and plan to write one. I don't know anything about publishing or finding an agent. What are some steps to take?
Write the book for sure. Depending on, I will tell you, and if you go to our website, rightwayco, WRTEWAYCO.com, You can schedule a 30-minute free consultation or just email me at joe, at rightwaycode.com. So we can talk about what exactly the book is. But especially if you have a book that's fiction or that would be marketed as a novel of any kind, write the book first. Definitely write the book first.
Okay, write the book first. All right, everyone says I should post my content online. I know who this comes from. This is a friend of mine. Uh,
Okay.
I don't know where I should be posting my work. How do I figure that out?
This is a great question, and it's something that I intended to touch on and totally didn't. I think so, and I might go off on a tangent here, Danette. I'm
Okay, it's all
sorry.
right.
I think that one of the things I think it's really important to decide. You got to decide a couple things. I was saying before, you got to know what you want. You got to, if you want to pivot, if you're whatever you're doing, you're sort of done, and you want to pivot, you got to decide a few things. You got to decide what you want, what you don't want, and what you're good at. I don't think there's any, and that could be boiled down, and that could be expanded upon, and that could be outside the box. What you're good at might be sort of an outside the box. You might be a really good facilitator. You might be a really good negotiator. You might be a really good conceptualizer. You might just be a really good executor. And all of that is great, but you sort of got to like figure out what of those boxes you fit in, and then you can start sussing out exactly what specifically you're good at. And those are things you want to leverage, not only for the benefit of like who you work for, whether it be a client because you're freelance or you're an entrepreneur, or whether it be an employer or whatever. You want to do that not only for them, because if it's stuff that you're good at, not only is it not good, it's going to not feel like it's going to take effort, not work, but it's something maybe that you like to do, which, as I said before, is a huge other part of the process. So particularly with putting your work online, so this like brings me to content creation and social media. Like, I love that everyone says you should post your content online, because everybody should post their content online. Because content has value, and that's been proven already. And I hate to use the word influencers, because I think social media is heading for a pretty big transition. But you should definitely be posting your content online. And I think it's important to consider a couple of things. Consider what you have access to. Consider what you can be consistent with. What apps or what platforms you can be consistent with. You know, if you have a camera set up and like some cheap lighting, and have something to say or a service to offer, or you have a battery of tasks that people want to know how to do, then you have a YouTube channel. Start a YouTube channel. If if you're into fashion, or you really love, you collect sneakers or whatever, start an Instagram page. Like, I think that you just got to figure out what you like, or what maybe you're already doing, to leverage it and weaponize that content in a way. But I would say it's got to be like, now I say this, like, start a YouTube channel. But if you can't sit down and put a video up every day, or a couple times a day, or like commit a couple 2 hours, 3 hours, and make sure that your channel is refreshing daily or weekly, then you find something else. Find what you can do consistently. And again, that's not work. That's just making sure that you do it every day, for sure.
All right, so let me see what else we have here. So, all right, I was just typing another question that we received. So let
Oh,
me
great.
go back up to, I think we're on question number 3. You're a producer. Do you produce in LA and Hollywood?
I'm based half time, supposed to be based half time in LA, obviously since March. I've been sort of grounded um, everywhere. I mean, this tech company is an international company, and we provide products and services that are in demand all over the world. So even in just the last year, I've been a lot of places. Um, so not the kind, and producing is kind of an amorphous job title. Um, uh, it encompasses a lot of things. So when I say I'm a content producer, that means like, sometimes I get hired, get brought onto a team to write a pitch for a cable company or a new show on History Channel or whatever. Might get brought in to create branding content for a company. With my work with and just to sort of maybe clarify it a little bit further, my work in AR, I shoot live footage. So like when you go, so like AR is like when you go to one of those things that looks like a photo booth. You can get your picture taken with like an athlete or celebrity. When it's a live character that you can get a photo with, I'm the one that shoots the footage of the live character. So if you go to, if you're at the Super Bowl in Miami and you can go get your picture taken with Lamar Jackson, I did a green screen shoot with Lamar Jackson to create the content that becomes the AR experience in that particular product. So we go anywhere. We're in demand everywhere. So I have a lot of different roles as a content producer, and a producer is literally just someone that helps create the opportunity for a particular content to exist and reach an audience.
All right. All right. Good. Good. So Joe, you have a podcast with a partner. I want to start one with a partner. Do we need to seek counsel from an attorney to draw up a partnership agreement?
Ooh, ooh. Uh, do do you trust your partner? I so I would say uh, it depends, and that sounds horrible. I am we don't have a partnership agreement for our podcast. The thing about it is does the podcast represent a brand, or does the podcast represent a stake in something? Is there money on the line? When you start a podcast, probably not. If you guys want to do like a personal agreement or like a verbal gentleman's agreement that's like, hey man, don't leave this podcast and start the same podcast and do it somewhere else. But a podcast sort of exists in like this free space where really anything you say or produce for the podcast is sort of just out there, public domain a little bit. Yeah, I think that's one of like, it's the same as social media. And unfortunately, you run the risk of it being co-opted. I know that there obviously on Twitter, there are a lot of like influencers on Twitter who were pretty upset at online publications for maybe cribbing from their Twitter feed to put together like a hot take. And obviously that's not cool, but unfortunately on social media, there's not a lot of governance over who owns the content we put on our various social media profiles or on a podcast feed. I would also say, like, just find a partner that you don't feel like you have to go to a lawyer to figure something out. I would say no, but that also, I mean, in freelance and in content creation, and when you sort of have a lot of plates spinning in the air, you do want to look out for yourself. And so I do recommend whenever possible, just making sure that if you got a lawyer in the family, I mean, that's expensive hourly. So if you got a lawyer in the family, you got a friend that can look over, any kind of legal document or binding document or whatever. Yeah, I definitely would recommend a professional looking something over. So, don't be afraid of that. But I think in this particular instance, I think you're all right.
Thank you, Joe. Uh, so this goes to our hospitality students who I think they're in class right now. So I
Mhm.
dropped this question for them, and they'll catch this on the replay. Uh, so we have a few hospitality students in the group. Their industry is not doing well because of the pandemic. They are currently in a college program. Could you offer any advice for them?
I mean, that's tough. I've been trying to be as much of an advocate for I live primarily in a small town in southwestern Colorado, and definitely trying to like keep hope alive with a lot of independently owned establishments that are desperately trying to stay afloat. So we try to do a lot of help for them. Um, Yeah, I think it's a really tough time, and I think the unfortunate part about is our we're not there's not federal assistance really in the right way for these for what are bread and butter. I mean, like, I'm very deeply connected in my heart to food service and hospitality, and I um, I find it regrettable that these are the bread and butter culture. A lot of times, culturally, locally, community, the bread and butter of our towns and cities and neighborhoods, and they're we'll freak out when they're gone, but we're not offering them enough help. In terms of advice, I would definitely be curious. Having bartended, run a couple bars, I'd be curious what their where their interest lies and where their focus is. And I think if there's any kind of pivot that can be made right now with like the looming specter of the pandemic and restaurant closures and bar closures and hotel closures, I would say like what what other attributes do you have that you can um, draw on? I mean, you're geared towards a career in hospitality. Do you take are you do you shutterbug? Are you a photographer? Even if it's just with your iPhone, start a food Instagram, like, or if you write, or even if you just like sit around a journal, like, start a blog. Like, consistency with that kind of content creation, still in the world of consistency and care, you can turn that into something people have. You can really, I would really say, um, you don't not this is not meant to say like focus your attention somewhere else. Is maybe widen your attention a little bit to other possibilities and opportunities. Otherwise, you're just going to like keep it narrow and stare down this the the pandemic and the job market for the hospitality industry, and it's going to bug you out. And so, yeah, I would say just try to stay open and stay willing, for some alternatives.
I like that. Stay open and stay willing.
Yeah,
So
which is
this
a
one,
huge thing just in general. I think like open and willing, and not only open, yeah, you got to be open to alternatives. And I know it's hard because you need laser like focus and ambition to get the job you want to get, to send out applications, to send out resumes, to follow up on emails. And I understand that, but um, you get too focused on one thing and you don't realize that you're sort of blind to other opportunities. And I think I didn't take a step in the right direction until I started thinking that maybe, um, you know, there wasn't just one path, but there was multiple paths.
oh, I like that. There wasn't just one path. There was multiple. I will be posting that up, guys. So when you talk, Joe, you're not in our Facebook group. So as you're talking, I'm writing, and then
Hmm.
I will
Hmm.
listen to this again, and
Oh,
I will
great.
post up quotes, and I like that one about
Oh,
moving
great. Oh,
fast. So that will
thank
be
you.
one.
Excellent. Good.
This one I didn't drop in the chat. It just came up. It's interesting, and I'll just give it to you. How does one tell where their interest in life is?
Oh man. I mean, that is the question. That is the question. I think, yeah, I think, well, I mean, and maybe it might not be the same for every person. Like, interest was always easier for me than the how that where that interest fits. If you don't know what you're interested in, I don't know. I would say like you need some like just some deep meditation and soul searching. If you don't know what do you gravitate towards? When you are out, when you're in your mind, or what books do you gravitate toward? What websites? What social media, what information do you sort of instinctively process or gravitate towards? Like, if you go in your news feed and there's five different posts, what's the first one you go to, or who has the profiles that you continue to visit, I would say that's a pretty good indicator of interest. Where to put that interest, I think, is really like the trickery. That is the and like I said before, I always enjoyed writing. I always had an interest in writing, but of all kinds. So I never was able to really um, hone it down into a specific writing career for myself. And it wasn't until even later in life that I really found that editing was more like, I was more interested in reading and working with other people's writing than I was even with my own. So that came much later, and it was something that, because with that kind of switch from wanting to be feeling like I have an interest in writing to feeling like I'm better served as an editor, there's something you give up there. So that's where I was talking before about open and willingness. You've got to sort of be willing in that regard. But yeah, plugging it into exactly what you want to do is tough, and that's I don't think anybody decides. I think for that in particular, talk to people. Talk to people either who have your same interest or work in the sphere of your interests, and pick their brain. I think that, unfortunately, I don't know that there's an external source to go to decide what your interests are. But, as you try to figure out how to apply that interest to the job market, be open, be willing, talk to a lot of people, and yeah, be willing to make some kind of a sacrifice. That's a long, sort of garbled answer to a very specific question. And I think probably what I should have just said was, I don't know how you figure out what your interest is, but it can also take a long time. And I think, don't judge yourself by other people's paths ever. I spent so much of my time doing that, and so much time like, well, he's got it or she's got it figured out, or why can't I know? I know people that I know, writers who woke, like, when they came to consciousness, they knew they wanted to write. I have a friend, he's a TV producer, and he knew from the first moment he ever watched an episode of the A-Team, he said to himself, I want to write those TV shows. So he knew his entire life. So his entire life, he was able to funnel the effort of his entire life into that one endeavor. I wasn't built like that. I've always been a little bit all over the place, and it took me a long time to figure out how to leverage, co-opt, and really funnel the effort of my life into the one endeavor.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now,
Right.
one of our greatest writers, she's no longer with us, Toni Morrison.
I mean, she did not publish until late in life.
Yes, and she
And
was an editor.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And
Okay.
look at what she
Yes.
created.
All
I mean,
right. Yeah, I think she was in her 40s when she
yeah,
first published,
yep,
had
yep,
already been married and divorced and had two careers, and decided
yep.
that, I'm going to write this book, and look what happened from the bluest eye. So,
100.
never know.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think that's the other thing too. Is like, don't gauge yourself by someone else's path, but also the timetable is up to you, and how much of the time you're willing to put in. I will say, I think that getting to a point where you're doing what you like, and you love, or you're good at, and you're getting paid for it, it can be a marathon. So I think, but it can, I guess it can also be a sprint. The timetable is really up to you. I would say prepare yourself for the marathon.
Yeah.
It might not take that long, but you got to train. You got to train like it's going to be a marathon.
I love it. I love it. All right. So, how has relationship building helped you on your journey, if it helped you along the way at all?
I don't think I would be doing anything without relationships.
Mm.
Um, and I run a business with a friend. I work in AR because I have similar philosophies as the CEO I work for, and we're a little bit two peas in a pod. Um, I work in marketing because of a friend. I worked in the digital space because of a referral from a friend. I think like, you know, which I didn't do, but if I had to say, because, I get nervous about saying what to do, and I think you should always be wary of people that tell you what to do. Definitely, I think if someone is telling you how to do, that's a different matter, and that's where learning can happen. But if someone's telling you what to do, I think there's just no there's no clear cut answers for any of this. And I think what you got to do is you got to process, especially, and this is again, Danette, what you're doing is great because you're bringing in people from a lot of different backgrounds in a lot of different professions, and you need to take all that information and then you got to decide what of it that resonates with you. 80% of the shit I'm saying here today, you might be like, that doesn't work for me,
Yeah.
and I get that, and that's 100% because, like I said at the top, like I was born white and male, and already that gives me a distinct advantage, unfortunately. And so we're not all starting at the same place, obviously. We're not all given the same tools. So the more I think, the more of information that you hear, but select what works for you. Select the things that work for you. One of the things that I would say is kind of like a no-brainer that is like concrete on the list is always develop relationships. I say network. I hate the term network. It's and I don't. I mean, I don't know a ton of people that really like it, but build relationships, and not ones that are seemingly advantageous. I mean, I think like don't go into the relationship for the wrong reasons. If you are maintaining a relationship with a contact or a friend who you're only looking for what they can do for you, I think that has a better chance of going sideways than not. And what I would reiterate is just is developing authentic relationships, and I think you don't realize the opportunities that will come from cultivating those authentic relationships. So it's the one thing that has got me through everything. I wouldn't have anything if I didn't have relationships.
Wow. Wow. And then I need to just say, as Joe said earlier, later in life, he realizes he's an editor as if he's 70 years old talking to us. I just, he's like
I
later in
feel
life.
I feel so gray
Yeah,
and
it's
so
this old
withered,
sage
Jeanette.
wisdom. So later in life, all right. I just had to drop
Uh,
that one. Uh, thank you about the relationship building. One of the things, so you know that we are a group who we service people who are marginalized
mhm,
and people who are BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color.
mhm,
But that's not all. I mean, we service anyone. So
mhm,
anyone who feels like they've ever been marginalized, I like to
mhm,
say that, is welcome in our group. And we have plenty of white members. And one thing I that one of the things, there are a couple of things that we all have in common, but one of them is this relationship building, the lack of skills in this area.
mhm,
Either because we've only built relationships with people who we are comfortable with, right? You do business with people who you like, who you are familiar with, who you're comfortable with, who don't necessarily intimidate you, right?
mhm,
And so that's how a lot of our relationship building has gone for our careers. Like
mhm,
many of us, either we self marginalized because we didn't feel comfortable, or we felt like we were being marginalized, and we were there at the table, but we really weren't up front and center. So
yeah.
we didn't earlier in our careers understand the importance of building these relationships, and we didn't.
Mhm,
uh, and so in this group, I love that you say, building the relationship is key, because that's one of the things that we consistently say to our members, and we try to reiterate over and over again. To demonstrate the importance of it, I tell everyone, every single presenter with the exception of two. And yesterday I received our 51st presenter flyer, right? So we've scheduled 50,
amazing,
51.
amazing.
And of those, 49 of those people are people like you, Joe. People
Hmm.
who I have met for the,
Yeah,
and we've just,
perfect
yes,
example.
yeah.
Yeah.
So all of the knowledge that we've received here are from people that I just built relationships with, primarily on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
so imagine if I mean, all of the greatness that has come into this group. Imagine if I was building these relationships throughout my 21-year career. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
the amount of just wisdom and knowledge and resource that I could have brought to this group.
Absolutely.
So it is key. It is definitely
Yeah.
key, and I learned it
Yeah.
late in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
And yeah, well, and I think that, I think that's such a great point. Like, learning it late also, like, yeah, I think it's a real, I think it's a real challenge though, because I think, in terms of building relationships, I think we've been taught it wrong for so long.
yeah,
And now with with the way communication has gone, not only because of advances in technology and social media, but also because of the pandemic, the way communication has gone is it I think at first it was really limiting our ability to get better at building
yes,
relationships.
yeah,
But I do think, yeah, and I would credit you. LinkedIn is the only social, or like social media platform that I'm on. I'm not on any other social media, and in fact, I would urge you, like, if you're like in an effort to take back social media into the user's hands, I would recommend, if you're not using it for a specific thing, get rid of it. But I would say LinkedIn, I'm very wary of those, of contacts, of connection for connection's sake.
yes,
And and I do take a page out of your book. I think when I make connections on LinkedIn with people in my industry or industries, I take a page out of your book. I think you have to make that, you have to make the personal jump. It can't just be transactional.
yes,
That's People don't realize how they might respond to a connection like that, and yet we still do it
do it.
because clicking connect has
Yeah.
become this like easy empty thing.
Hmm. Yes, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I was just talking to someone yesterday, and I posted a question for that person in the chat in a moment.
Yeah.
She has like 35,000 followers on
Sure.
LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and she went out onto LinkedIn about a year and a half ago and started to just share about her personal professional journey, and the challenges that she had. And so she grew her followers very organically, very,
Amazing.
very, people who her story resonated with them, some aspect of her story, of her journey. And it's real. It's
Hmm.
not, I liked your post, so now you like mine, or you comment
Right.
on mine, that kind of thing.
Right.
And, I was talking to her and I said, I no longer, and I need to get myself back to that. So she takes an hour a day,
Yeah.
and she's really curating her contacts, right? So
Yeah.
she's reading their content, she's responding to what resonates for her, and not for gain, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
for gain, and it's
Yeah.
worked very well for her. And that is something that I did a lot of in the very beginning. But now, I'm running CDPD myself, and I don't
Right.
have that time every morning to do that because I'm on calls and stuff every day. But there is great value in that, guys. There's a lot of value in curating your contacts, right? Just
Authentic
finding
and
out about them. Mhm.
authentic audience, authentic
Yes.
followership. I mean, I saw the text here when I saw real and organic. Not only was I, first of all, like, kind of blown away at a 35,000 followership,
Yes.
but that's what you want to do. We actually, for our company, Right Way, we have a podcast, Right Way podcast. Obviously, that was mentioned. It's called Right Way Podcast. We do talk about the publishing industry a lot, but we
Hmm.
also talk about author platform. And author platform, applies to really any writer who's getting or got a book out. But it's something you really have to build yourself. It's
Yeah.
something that its success relies on only you. And we had a guest on. Her name's Amberly Lago. She's an author. She's a speaker. She's a coach. Just a phenomenal story about something similar, about like really building her author platform and her fan base organically, and so much so that, like, when she did finally get really popular, and she really achieved like a height of her fame and notoriety, and renown, she briefly hired someone else to do her marketing on social media. and her audience immediately knew it wasn't her.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
immediately knew
yeah.
because
They
she's
know
so
her.
real and so
Yeah,
authentic that they could detect it in an instant. And I think this is exactly what we're talking about with don't network, build relationships.
yes,
Like
yes,
that's
yeah.
exactly.
And interestingly, I just sent this woman your podcast last
Good.
night.
Well,
So
because she should write an ebook. She should
yeah, she.
immediately write an ebook about how to grow a LinkedIn following of 35,000 people
Yes,
instantly. Yeah.
and I mean she has phenomenal content for a book, and I was like, listen, I think you should connect with Joseph. I'm actually going to
Yeah,
make a
please.
connection
No,
between
that
the
would be
two of
great.
you. But one of the things, the last thing I'll say about her is recently during the pandemic, she is a social worker.
Hmm.
And she was faced with, do I continue to work? And, you know, at the height of the pandemic, going to the most vulnerable areas, or, you know, she has a young child who's medically
Hmm.
challenged. And so she had to stop working. And so one of the posts that she did video on
Hmm.
LinkedIn with 30 plus thousand followers was, I think this was in around April or May. I just applied for food stamps today.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you know, like that was her video.
Yep.
You know, like,
Well,
you know, in light of all of these, you know, dots behind my name and all these degrees and certifications, the reality, this was my reality. And, you know, immediately people were like, well, how? You have so many followers. Like, no, but yeah,
yeah,
these are my friends in essence.
yeah,
These are not
yeah,
people who are giving me money. These are my friends.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, but I would connect you guys because she just really has a very inspiring story, a
Please do. And
genuine.
that's just a feat. Like the 35,000 people, that's just a feat. That's
Yes,
incredible.
yes.
Organically. Like that's
Organically,
brilliant,
organically,
brilliant,
yes.
brilliant. Yeah.
Um, so here's our next question is, so you found opportunities during and or out of the pandemic in terms
Hmm.
of professionally.
By the grace, like
Mm.
it could have easily gone either way. Obviously, like because I produce, I produce live green screen shoots. Obviously, COVID shut that down, so there was a good chunk that got taken away. And we launched this new business in January, and my business partner and I were both like, "Oh, we're dead in the water. Like, there's no way." Knock on wood, we're hustlers as well, and we're referral only. We're our business is referral only, so we're really word of mouth, and we
Yeah.
really like have like a very tight community of clients. So it's like I said, knock on wood, it's been okay. Um, but it's so interesting because talking a lot about like marginalization and discriminate and sort of like discriminate force that we experience both in the professional world, obviously culturally and nationally. We are very much so discriminatory. But this COVID thing, uh, it's weird because what a horrible thing, but it is uh, in an indiscriminate force. It
Yes.
affects us
Yes.
all.
It affects everyone.
It affects everyone no matter what. And like, obviously, like, you know, Kim Kardashian flying her family to
Mm.
wherever, Bali or whatever, so they could feel normal. That's one thing, and most of us aren't doing that. But
Mhm.
in one way or another, this has touched all of us. And if you've lost your job or have seen a diminishment in any opportunities during the pandemic, my heart really goes out because everybody had their moment of panic. Like
Yes.
March came, and when the lockdowns came, there was a month, 2 months, 2.5 months where I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, this is
Mhm.
very much we're dive bombing. But I do think that's again why we've been using the technological communication and social media for such weird and empty purposes for so long. And I think COVID came along, and all of a sudden, all of that stuff had purpose again. And I think you can really, even in this pandemic, even when things are looking dark, you can use social media, you can use LinkedIn, you can use the digital space, you can use Instagram to reach out, make connections, build relationships, get your content out there. And I think you're this woman from LinkedIn that built the followership, like what an incredible bit of content that post was about going on food stamps.
Mhm.
It's totally vulnerable. It's
Yeah.
totally real. It's totally honest. And that's the kind of, I think we're actually going to be in kind of a weird little renaissance, or I see, and I could be wrong, but I see a kind of weird renaissance for content, because I think we have had now we have no choice but to be real and
Yes.
authentic and
Yes.
vulnerable. And like,
Mhm.
so I think even with podcast, I think, we had there was a, whatever, that a renaissance for, there's a high time for podcasts a few
Mhm.
years ago, but it was just like, every podcast was like four white dudes sitting around talking about
Well,
movies. And
uh-huh.
it's like, all right. And now we're actually getting podcasts that have strategic, educational, and enriching content, strategic, professional content, and then really raw, vulnerable, real content. And I think we're in a renaissance. So I would actually say also, if you're looking to like produce content, a podcast is an excellent, cheap, accessible way to get your voice out there. Just think like it has a kind of like protective quality to it, because you got whatever, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour to get your piece said without getting trolled on Twitter.
Yes.
I mean, it
Yes.
really is like, I
Mhm.
think podcasts will ultimately just like kind of, I think podcasts and YouTube will ultimately just take over as like the media that we consume. So
I see that, especially since I don't have real cable, so I
yeah,
stream everything.
yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
yep. I don't see the regular news. I haven't seen that in
I
years.
I have convinced everyone I know to
Yeah.
cut. I lobbied for them to cut the cable.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
and I'll just say about opportunities out of the pandemic. So everyone should know that CDPD only exists because of the pandemic. So out of something so terrible, this space was created, and it was
yeah,
created out of me feeling um, kind of like almost hopeless that I couldn't continue to help. I couldn't help as many people who were reaching out to me. A number
hmm,
of people were reaching out to me, and I remember the evening when I sat down. I remember where I was sitting in my living room, and I was just like, what do I do? Because I can't keep doing what I was doing, which was trying to individually help every single person who was contacting me from around the world, because I
yeah,
guys have worked internationally. So when we started to shelter in place, people from all over the world started to contact me for help, to find work, to prepare for work. And I was like, I jumped in immediately to help because I'm a helper. But
mhm,
even in that, I realized I couldn't help all of them. So this group started because 53 people were in my inbox, my email, all my social media platforms asking for help. And out of something so terrible, we have CDPD. And I want to believe that we've helped and that we are continuing to help.
yeah, yeah,
So,
definitely.
we don't make money, but we help, and that's great.
Yeah.
that is
That's
great.
right. It's information and it's content and it's stuff that people can take away and use. And I think that, that's, you're right. You're right there in the content revolution.
Yes. And so my final question from the group, and this one I posted again for that person that I'm going to connect you with,
Oh yeah.
is, and I was just talking to her yesterday, and she says, yeah, people tell me to do this, do this, do that. And I love one things I love with her is I am getting the same kind of feedback from people. Do this, do that to make money. Start a subscription service. And I'm like, nah, that's not really what I want to be. I don't want to be a poverty pimp. That's my key. That's my real. I don't want to be a poverty pimp. Because, like that's not what I want to do.
I love it.
you know, and so she's like, people don't believe I don't make money off of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the question. And you don't have to answer that because I'm going to connect the two of you. But
Yeah.
guys, the question was I have over 35,000 followers on LinkedIn. They are real and organically grown, strong engagement. How can I monetize that? And I just want to say that when I ask that question, it is not like there's an organic way to monetize, but a way that we don't feel like you're taking advantage of people.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking about.
And which I think is excellent. And I did mean what I said. I think, and this is not taking advantage, because e-learning and e-learning materials,
Mhm.
ebooks, digital courses, et cetera, are seriously in demand. And it's a marketplace that is blowing up. And I think, I mean, I would say like she should write an ebook about how to grow 35,000 followers on LinkedIn, real and organically.
Yeah.
And I think that, an ebook can be anything from a kind of like pamphlet to like, a legitimate kind of textbook. And, you could put that up on a site for nothing. You could charge it for cheap, but with that followership that she's already, because here's the thing, is like she doesn't have 35,000 followers. She has 35,000 followers, and whatever followers are following those
Them.
35,000
Yes,
followers.
yes, yeah,
So her audience is like astronomical. So if
yeah.
you know, if she does the work of building an ebook, promoting it on LinkedIn or wherever else, whatever other platform she's on, she's she's giving people content and education. She's not taking
Not
anything from
taking.
anyone.
She's giving us something that they can take
So
actionable steps. Yeah.
so she should feel very
Yeah.
fair and free
Mhm.
to do something like that. And I do think that's an easy first thing for her to do.
I love it. I
Because
love
she could
it.
do like a 10 steps to 35,000 followers or
Yeah.
something like that. Some kind of
Uh-huh.
that's very easy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, I don't have anything else in the chat. I've looked, and every now and again, the chat is a delay. So, I'm going to my questions. Joe, this has
Oh,
been
great.
great. It's been well
Thank
worth
you
the wait.
again. And
Well
I
worth the
really
wait.
appreciate it. I know I really
Hmm.
appreciate you, and thank you
I
again so
appreciate
much, and to
you.
everybody on the webinar as well. It's really great.
Yes. All right. So, I have my three questions, guys, and I'm going to go. All right, Joe.
Sorry,
So,
I unplugged for a second.
oh,
Sorry,
no
I couldn't
problem.
hear
No
you.
problem.
I apologize.
CDPD's mission is to increase marginalized and BIPOC groups' access to employment opportunities and representation in the workforce by providing our members with free training, mentorship, and other resources. CDPD was created in response to record unemployment and underemployment rates stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. So, my question to you, Joe, um, is have you ever been marginalized? And if so, would you mind sharing?
Um, I won't. I don't know. I think I've never been marginalized, and
All
I
right.
think, like I said, I came out of the gate with distinct advantages,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate advantages nationally and culturally. But I won't. But I do think, and this goes back to a previous point I had about work experience and the kind of work you do and how we can't seem to, we aren't individualized in the eyes of prospective employers. We are just like, we become like bullet points on a resume.
Mm,
And so I don't feel marginalized, but I was a bartender for 10 years and I had a very difficult time
mm.
convincing employers at the companies that I wanted to work for that that I was more than,
A
you
bartender.
know, a bartender. And I think that's one of the things that, and I love being a bartender. I'm very proud of it, very proud of that experience. I'm very proud of that industry and that culture. But so I do think there is a certain amount of judgment and discrimination that happens when you only have a particular kind of work experience
Yeah.
on your resume. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing with a person who's only done, whatever, data entry or
Mm-hmm.
executive assistant or whatever. We love, well, I mean, in this country, we love labels. We just
Oh,
love
yes,
to
we
like
do.
tag everything. You're this
Yes.
and you're that, and you fit over here. Well, you're this also, so you can kind of be in both, but we're going to create a new label so that we can put you
Mhm.
there. I think that kind of discrimination is something that we can all probably relate to. And so I do feel it. I do feel, and I think, obviously, like I said, distinct advantages into getting out of it. But I do feel like that's a real specific problem
Mhm.
that we're dealing with, is people having to deal with being coupled with their work experience.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's such garbage. It really isn't. Like, you gotta, I interview people, not candidates. Like,
Yes.
it's like the most obvious thing. And I think also, you got a lot of companies, and I realize there are very specialized um, industries out there, very specialized roles in those
Mhm.
industries. But you look at some of these, you look at some of like the required qualifications for some of these job openings, and I'll browse them just for
Mhm.
fun. It's insane what they're asking of
Yeah,
people.
they're looking for unicorns.
Yeah,
They're looking
like
for unicorns. Mhm.
10 years of experience here and 10
Yeah.
years of experience here, and I'm
Mhm.
thinking to myself, like, do
Yeah.
you understand how long I've been alive?
Hmm. And
Right.
then they want that, but then there's ageism. right? Which we talk about in this group all the time. So you
Totally.
want all of this experience and qualification, but you want a 25-year-old? Like you don't
Huge.
want
Yeah.
a
You want
35
a
even.
25-year-old with 10 years of
Yes,
experience?
you know?
All right,
Yeah, you
let's
know?
go over basic math and then you could go
Let's
back to
go.
running your company,
Yes.
you idiot.
Yeah. So the marginalized question I ask everyone, I ask all of our presenters because oftentimes we can marginalize ourselves, right?
Mhm,
We can,
mhm.
but typically we're marginalized by some small minded person who's afraid of something they see inside of us. It's like what I
Yep,
believe.
yep.
However, when people hear the word marginalized, they often think of a minority or
Mhm,
a woman, right?
mhm.
And what we've learned in this group, I knew it, but what we've learned in this group is that anyone can be marginalized. And your
Sure.
example of being a bartender and having to almost con your way into another situation, right?
Mhm.
Is a form of marginalization. So being marginalized
Yeah.
for that background. And we've
Well,
had white.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when we get marginalized in that way too, then we do go immediately into self-marginalization.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
after a period of time,
Hmm.
we become convinced that we're stuck in that role, and we
Yes.
become convinced that you're like, oh yeah, I am just a bartender.
That's it. Exactly. Oh my goodness, I love that you say that because I'm digressing a bit. We have a lot of that in the group. So we have a lot of in the group where how do I convince someone that I can do this work? How do I identify these transferable skills and then
Yeah,
not only identify them but sell them if I've never really done that exact work that they're asking,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it's a slippery slope and a balancing act.
yep.
But yeah, so I asked the question because we hear all kinds of things from all kinds of people about marginalization, and I always
Yeah,
like to say like we have much like yourself, nice looking white guy, right? Epitome of privilege, you know?
totally,
Yeah,
totally.
we had Luke, nice looking white guy, Luke Hill. He's an
Yeah,
executive recruiter now,
yeah,
but he
yeah,
was a Marine.
yeah.
And when I asked him the question, he responded, and I thought he would say, no, never been marginalized. And he said, yeah, when I came out of
Mhm.
the military, much like you're
Yeah,
saying, because
yeah.
of his
Yeah,
work.
I actually have a client. They have an HR company, an HR training company down in San Diego, and he is they're a couple, and he is an ex very decorated Marine, and he's working on a whole program that does what we're talking about, like distilling. And I think there's a demand for it, is taking your work experience and distilling it down to the applicable skill. He
Yeah.
is doing that for Marines right now, and I think that there's so much. I mean, it's that kind of marginalization too
Mhm.
has all of the trappings of the standard sort of, like national marginalization rhetoric.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
it's the same kind of shit
Mhm.
where it presumes,
Mhm.
it stereotypes,
Yes.
and they decide based on that alone that you
Yes.
are or are not right for the job.
Yeah, and so that is, and we here, marginalization is marginalization for us. Like I have some people say, "Oh, this loosely fits the definition." Yeah, yeah,
Sure.
yeah. You were marginalized. Okay, that's what
Yeah.
that was,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Yeah.
okay. No, you're not black.
Yeah.
No, you're not a woman. No, you're not Asian. No, yeah, it's okay. But
Sure.
I asked the question not so we can harp on the woe is me, I've been
Sure.
marginalized, but so people
Sure.
can see one, um, even though someone has been marginalized and may have even admitted that because of it I self marginalized, which a lot of us do,
Yeah.
that at some point something clicked for them and they figured it out and they
Hmm.
found success in spite
Yeah.
of, right, the
Yep.
marginalization.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that our
And
members
sometimes
know. Go ahead.
all it might take is like one. See, and all it takes is one. I mean, I know that everybody was laughing at Lady Gaga, but she's
Uh-huh.
right.
Yeah.
All it takes is one. And I
Yeah.
do think, like, if you feel this way, get on link. Like, we live in the age of information. So like, get on LinkedIn, like find your applicable skills, get
Yes.
on LinkedIn, write a really solid bio, a really headline of what your skills are, and then start finding the companies that you would want to work for. And you have access through
Yes.
LinkedIn to the people that run those companies.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would say, like, appeal to them, reach out, build that
Yeah.
relationship. Like, yeah,
I love it.
that's
Yes.
totally, totally.
All right, guys. I'm gonna see if anybody has anything else because I like my last question to be the last question. I asked you the second to last question, and that one is this is my favorite question too, Joe. And since you're
Oh,
so
good.
old, Yeah, you'll be able to answer this one.
Yep.
Uh,
Elderly. Elderly.
yes. Think back, Joe, a younger version of yourself. And if you could go back, 40 years and tap that Joe on his shoulder when he
hmm
started his professional journey, what would you say to him that you now know? Or what would you have wished someone would have tapped you on your shoulder back then and said to you?
Oh, that is a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's one, but I mean there are a ton. There are a ton of things that I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think the one in particular is that uh, doing work that you love is greater than a career path. And I think we're after that. I think ultimately we're after that because yes, it's singular. Yes, it's focused, but also we've sort of been conditioned to think that's what we need. And that becomes very validating is the idea that like, oh yeah, I went for computers to college for computer science and now I'm a computer scientist. Okay, great. Most people aren't doing that and life happens. Obviously, in the case of the pandemic, we've seen that and it does not stop for anything. So I would say I would tell myself that the focus should just be on, if you stay on the path of focusing on the work you love to do, then that's, I would also tell myself to, stop. You don't know anything. You don't know, and you certainly don't know everything.
I like that. Stop. You don't know anything. You certainly don't know
Just
everything.
stop it.
Okay, that one will
Just
be
stop.
reposted, guys. You know me.
Stop trying to posture and think you know anything at all.
Oh, this has been fun, Joe. Really?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean it. Yeah, I really, really appreciate it. This was great.
Yes. Okay. This is our final question. And guys, I don't
I'm
have
ready.
anything else in this chat. So, our final question, Joe, for this afternoon is if we had one takeaway from this time with you, what would you want that to be if we only had one?
Oh, uh, I know that sometimes it seems like it's not true, but your success really does fully depend on you.
Mm,
Fully.
I love it. All right, guys, this was Joe Tower. I
Thank you
loved
again.
this time. I
Me
can't wait
too.
for us to do it again.
Seriously.
Maybe.
Yeah. Anytime.
Yeah. And I
Anytime.
really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. I very much appreciate you, and thank you all for being here.
All right, then, Joe.
All
Take
right.
good care.
Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.